They say family is forever. But what happens when someone who used to be family decides to torch every bridge they can find just to see you suffer? I didn't want drama. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. But she forced my hand. I was staring at the half-melted cake, the one my daughter and I had baked together, giggling in the kitchen, frosting on her nose, when I realized something in me had snapped. That cake wasn't just dessert. It was our new beginning. It was the celebration of my son's engagement, our blended family moving on after years of hurt, and she destroyed it. The worst part. My son was standing right there, frozen, crushed. The woman he was about to marry had tears in her eyes. And my ex-mother-in-law, she was smiling. But this isn't where it begins. Let me take you back to the morning. The sun had barely risen, and my living room was already filled with voices, laughter, and the smell of coffee and cinnamon rolls. It had taken me weeks to plan this event, my son's engagement brunch. He'd asked me specifically, "Mom, can you host it? I want everyone to feel included." I agreed. I even invited her, my ex-husband's mother. My ex-mother-in-law. Against my better judgment, I want her to be there, my son had said, with that hopeful, innocent smile. She's still grandma to me. I couldn't say no, not to him. So I opened my home, my heart, and the gates of chaos. The moment she walked in, I knew it. The air shifted. You know how some people just carry tension like a storm cloud in heels? With her perfectly ironed blouse, her artificial smile, and her judgmental eyes scanning my house like it was a crime scene, she hugged my son and his fiancée with dramatic flair, ignored me completely. Fine. I let it go. That was my first mistake. You? See, this wasn't the first time she'd tried to sabotage me. When I was married to her son, she made it clear I was never good enough. Too emotional, too soft-spoken, not traditional enough. She constantly compared me to his exes, even ones he had barely dated. But after the divorce, I thought we'd parted ways forever. Apparently, bitterness runs deep and petty runs deeper. The guests trickled in, everyone mingled. I caught my son's eye across the yard. He gave me a thumbs up. I exhaled. Maybe, just maybe, we'd get through the day without a scene. That's when I heard her voice. I didn't expect you to actually pull this off. "Dear," she said, loud enough for the guests nearby to hear. "Given your history?" I turned. There she was, holding a mimosa, surrounded by 3 of my new in-laws, all looking mildly uncomfortable. "I'm sorry," I said. "Oh, don't take it personally. You know what they say? Some women are better at organizing chaos than organizing brunch." I felt my stomach drop, but I smiled. I didn't want to make a scene. "You're welcome to leave if it's not up to your standards." She smiled back, that terrifying sugar-coated venom smile. "Oh no, I wouldn't miss this for the world." And then she walked away, just like that. I looked over at the table. The cake was still untouched. My daughter was chatting with her soon-to-be sister-in-law, laughing. It gave me strength. But the peace was short-lived. Later, as I passed by the kitchen, I heard her on the phone. "No, I'm serious," she was whispering. "The fiancé's family are practically nobodies. It's tragic." And her, still playing. House like she wasn't the reason for the divorce. She was talking about me, in my home, during my son's engagement brunch. I didn't confront her. I wanted to. Oh, I wanted to, but I took a breath. I walked back out. I put on my smile. Because that day wasn't about her. It was about my son. But she wasn't done. The real blow came later. When we were all gathered around the table outside, just before the cake cutting, everyone had taken their seats. My son stood to say a few words, to thank everyone, to tell a story about his first date with his fiancée, to gush like only a proud young man can. People were clapping, laughing, some tearing up. Then he turned to me. "And I want to thank my mom," he said. "She's the heart of our family. She made all this possible." People clapped again. I held back tears. My daughter squeezed my hand, and right then, as if on cue, she got up, walked over to the dessert table, pushed the cake to the ground. Gasps. Silence. Then someone muttered, "Oh my God." My son turned, stunned. She didn't even look guilty. She just stared at me, eyes burning. "It was in the sun," she said. "It was melting. I was trying to help. Nobody bought it. Especially not my son. Or my daughter." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I picked up the shattered pieces of cake. I looked up at her, and I smiled, because that's when I knew. She had finally shown the world who she really was. She wanted a war, but she underestimated me. I didn't fight back then, but I would. In a way she'd never forget, and it all started with a phone call I made that night, long after the guests left, and the last glass had been washed. "I need your help," I said. "It's time." The person on the other end, someone she'd never expect, someone from her past. And this was just the beginning. If you've ever been pushed too far, if someone's ever tried to humiliate you in your own home in front of your loved ones, and you know what it feels like to be quiet when you want to scream. But sometimes, silence is just the calm before the storm. Watch till the end, because you're not going to believe what happened next. I don't regret a second of it. That night, after everyone had gone, my daughter found me alone in the kitchen, cleaning dried cake from the floor tiles. "Mom," she said gently, "you don't have to do this right now." But I couldn't stop moving. My mind wouldn't stop replaying everything, her smirk, the silence after the cake hit the ground, the way my son's face broke like a window under a brick. "She humiliated us," I whispered. "No," my daughter said, kneeling beside me. "She humiliated herself." I looked into my daughter's eyes too wise for 17, and realized something. I'd spent years letting this woman rent space in my head. Years of silence, of swallowing pain for the sake of family. But this time, it was different. This wasn't about me anymore. This was about legacy. My son's future. My daughter's dignity. And the promise I made to myself after the divorce? Never again will. I let her steal joy from my children. That's when I picked up my phone and made the call. The woman who answered hadn't spoken to me in over a decade. Her name was Candace, and she used to be my ex-mother-in-law's closest friend. Until they had a falling out that ended in gossip, betrayal, and a legal threat over a community fundraiser gone wrong. "Candace, it's me," I said. "I know this is random." "Oh wow. Now this is unexpected," she said, her voice cautious. "I need your help," I told her. "It's about Marcia." Silence. Then a soft exhale. What did she do this time? So I told her everything. The phone call. The sabotage. The cake. The scene she caused. The years she spent undermining me. And Candace laughed. Not a joyful laugh. More like a bitter, hollow chuckle. "She never changed," she said. "You think she's bad now? Should have seen her in the charity board days. She got 2 women blacklisted because she was jealous of their husbands." "What?" "She doesn't just destroy people. She collects their ruins like trophies." I was silent. The image was too accurate. Candace continued. "You want her exposed? I've got receipts. Receipts." I didn't even know what that meant, but I was intrigued. "I've kept everything," she said. "Emails, voice recordings. She threatened me over my husband's affair, even though she was the one sleeping with him." My jaw dropped. Never planned to use it, but maybe it's time someone held her accountable. I wasn't thinking revenge. I was thinking truth. I didn't want to stoop to her level, but I wanted people to know who she really was, and I had a plan. Not just to expose her, but to take back what she'd tried to steal from me. Respect, control, my voice. But before I could move forward, I had to revisit the past. Because the truth is, Marcia didn't become this overnight. Become a doormat by accident. Years ago, when I was still married to her son, I was naive. I thought if I smiled enough, cooked the right meals, invited her over, complimented her garden, I could win her over. She always smiled back. Oh. But it never reached her eyes. When I had my son, she showed up to the hospital and told the nurse, "Don't let her lift him too much. She's too fragile." When we hosted our first Thanksgiving as a couple, she said the stuffing was bold, which was her way of saying inedible. When I miscarried our second child, she told me over. T, maybe it's a blessing. You already struggle with one. I should have stood up to her then, but I was too scared. Scared of ruining the fragile peace. Scared of losing my husband's love. Scared of rocking the boat. But the truth is, the boat was already on fire. Fast forward to now, that engagement brunch was the spark that lit my fuse. But it wasn't the only reason I decided to act. 2 days after the event, my son called me. "Mom," he said, his voice cracking, "we're thinking of postponing the wedding." I nearly dropped the phone. What? Emma's parents. They were really upset. Her mom cried all night. Her dad said, if things are already this dramatic, what's it going to be like at the wedding? I felt my heart sink. It's not your fault, he added quickly. It's Grandma, but still. It's tainted now. It's that word. Tainted. She had tainted my son's engagement. That's when the fire inside me turned into steel. It wasn't about petty revenge. It was about protecting the people I love from her chaos permanently. So I met with Candace in a quiet cafe 2 towns over. She brought a manila envelope. Inside, screenshots of emails, voice memos of conversations, even a bank receipt showing Marcia embezzling $1,000 from a neighborhood fundraiser she chaired. I stared at the pile. She's not just mean, I said slowly. She's criminal. Candace nodded, and reckless. That night, I made another call to a family friend, a lawyer. I asked him, hypothetically, what it would take to report. Certain activities, not to press charges, just to file awareness. He agreed to look into it, confidentially. But I also knew, if I went full scorched earth, my son might hate me. He still loved his grandmother, even after what she did, so I did something harder. I told him the truth. I invited him and Emma over. No drama, just tea. I showed them the photos, the screenshots, the bank receipt. I told them everything. At first he was stunned, then pale, then quiet. Emma reached for his hand. "Baby," she said softly. "It's okay, you didn't know." I knew she was hard, he said, but this is... She could have ruined everything. I held his hand too. She's still... "Can I?" said. "Unless we set a boundary together." He didn't say much. The next morning, I got a text from him. "We're not postponing the wedding. She's uninvited." "Thank you for protecting us," I cried, but not tears of sadness. Tears. Of relief? Of release. I've finally been seen by my son. And just when I thought the storm had passed, she struck again. I came home that afternoon to find my backyard gate wide open. My daughter's art project, a delicate glass sculpture for her college. Portfolio was shattered on the patio floor. The same patio where Marcia had once told me, "Glass art is silly." What a waste of time. I checked the camera footage. She'd been there 10 minutes. Didn't ring the doorbell. She'd come to destroy something again. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about petty jealousy. This was malice. Deliberate. Calculated, so I changed the locks. Set up an alarm. Filed a police report. Not for revenge. For protection. My daughter didn't sleep that night. "Is she going to ruin my graduation too?" she whispered. "No," I said. "Because this time, I'm not letting her near us." We were done playing nice, and yet, as angry as I was, part of me still grieved. Grieved the dream of having a peaceful extended family. Grieved the years I lost trying to please someone who would never be pleased. The grief surprised me, but it also gave me clarity, because you don't fight evil with evil. You fight it with truth, with boundaries, with unshakable love for the people worth protecting. So I started documenting everything, not to go viral, not to shame, but to protect my kids. And when my son's wedding came, in a quiet ceremony on a hilltop, surrounded by family and friends, we had peace. No screaming, no sabotage, just love. But don't think for a second she was done. A week later, she posted on Facebook, "I wasn't invited to my grandson's wedding." Imagine that. "I raised him better. Must be the influence of others," people commented. "So sorry." Unbelievable. "What kind of mother does that?" I didn't reply, but someone else did, Candace. She posted a single sentence. "Sometimes." People who play the victim are actually just mad their manipulation didn't work. And the likes poured in. She messaged me later. You didn't have to stoop. The truth showed itself. And that's the thing, when you stop being afraid of losing people who only bring harm, you win. If you've ever been afraid to speak up, if you've ever walked on eggshells just to keep the peace, if you've ever had your moment ruined by someone who couldn't stand your happiness, please hear this. You are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to say no, and you are allowed to take your power back with dignity. If you're still with me, thank you. This story isn't over, because next, you'll see exactly how I closed the chapter for good. So don't miss the next part, because the final blow wasn't loud, it was silent, legal, and absolutely permanent. Stay with me. You deserve to know how to stand up and stand free. The knock on the door came on a rainy Thursday afternoon, not loud, not urgent, just cold. I opened it slowly, towel in hand, expecting maybe a neighbor or package, but it was her. Marcia, standing under a dripping umbrella, pearls around her neck, holding a soaked manila envelope like it was evidence in a murder trial. I didn't say a word, just stared. I need to speak to you, she said stiffly, not even looking me in the eyes. I leaned against the doorframe. You're not welcome here. She flinched, just for a second. Then she composed herself. I brought something. I think you'll want to see it. Against my better judgment, I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. Not for her. It's for my daughter, who was in the living room working on her college application essay. Marcia handed me the envelope. Inside were wedding photos. Photos she had clearly begged, borrowed, or manipulated her way into obtaining. She wasn't in a single one, but she had them. Why are you showing me this? I asked, her voice cracked like ice under pressure. Should have been there, I folded my arms. You were uninvited. You ruined the engagement brunch. You humiliated your grandson. You destroyed my daughter's art. And you think you're the victim? For once, she didn't fight back. She just stood there, hair wet, mouth opening and closing, like she wanted to say something meaningful, but didn't know how. I waited. No apology came. Only a sentence that confirmed everything. I think it's unfair how you've turned them against me. I blinked. I didn't turn them against you. You did that yourself. She winced. You think you've won, don't you? I didn't answer, because this wasn't about winning anymore. It was about ending it. So I turned, opened the door, and said clearly, this will be the last time we speak. If you show up again, I'll call the police. I closed the door before she could respond, and I meant it. But the closure I thought I'd get from that final conversation, it didn't come. Instead, memories started surfacing like bruises I didn't know I still had. I remembered the time she threw away my homemade birthday card for my husband because grown women don't make crafts. The time she accidentally called my daughter by the wrong name 3 years into her life. The time she told my son, if your mom loved your father more, she wouldn't have pushed him away. I'd spent so many years absorbing those cuts, dismissing them, surviving them. But now, they all came rushing back because I was finally safe enough to feel them. The legal report had already been filed. The police now had record of the backyard incident, the footage, the damage. My lawyer friend had submitted the evidence Candace provided anonymously, not to press charges yet, but to formally protect us from further harassment. I thought that would be enough, but then I got the email subject line. Notice of legal representation. It was from her lawyer, apparently. I think she was accusing me of defamation, emotional harm, and intentional exclusion from a public family event. I stared at the screen, mouth dry. You can't make this stuff up. I forwarded it to my lawyer friend. Within the hour, he called me laughing. She doesn't have a case. She's just throwing darts. But I wasn't laughing, because this wasn't about the law. This was about wearing me down, getting back in my head, threatening me until I cracked. That's when I made a decision that changed everything. I decided to go public, not in the viral video way, not in the drag her online way, but I sat down and I wrote my story. All of it. From the early years to the quiet cruelty to the recent destruction, I wrote it not as an attack, but as a survival story, as a warning to others. As a love letter to anyone too afraid to stand up, I published it anonymously on a parenting blog I used to follow years ago, one with thousands of subscribers. I called it When Toxic Relatives Weaponize Family Events. Within hours, it was shared over 1,500 times. People commented, "I thought I was alone. You've just described my mill exactly. Thank you for giving me the courage to set boundaries." This made me cry, then breathe. I didn't use her name. I didn't mention the wedding or the cake. But she knew. And it killed her that I told my story and didn't need her name to make it powerful. 3 days later, she posted a cryptic rant on her Facebook. People love to lie and play victim these days. But truth always comes out. People responded with hearts. But one woman, her own sister, commented, "Maybe take a look in the mirror first, Marcia." That was the first time I saw real cracks forming in her armor, but I wasn't trying to destroy her. I was just trying to reclaim me. And strangely enough, it was working. I felt lighter. My daughter smiled more. My son and his wife came over for dinner without tension. My home felt like home again. One night, as we sat around the fire pit, Emma turned to me and said, "I know you probably didn't plan to be this kind of warrior, but I'm so grateful you are." I blinked back tears, because I didn't feel like a warrior. I felt like someone who had finally stopped bleeding, but it wasn't over yet. The final blow didn't come from me, it came from the community, apparently. Someone from her church read the anonymous blog post, recognized her. The email I got, weeks later, from someone I didn't even know, read, "I just wanted to say thank you. After reading your story, I finally understood what was happening in our committee. Marcia manipulated people for years. She's been removed from the fundraising board. I'm so sorry for what she did to you and your family." I stared at the message. Heart pounding. She had finally faced consequences, and I hadn't had to scream, curse, or destroy. I'd simply spoken the truth and let it echo. But even as I felt peace settling in, one thing still haunted me. What if I'd never spoken up? What if I'd let that cake crash to the ground, swept it up, and kept pretending? How many more moments would she have stolen? How many more smiles would she have turned sour? And how many people out there are still swallowing their rage, trying to keep the peace, bleeding quietly so no one sees the mess? To you, the silent ones, I say this: you are not crazy, you are not weak, and you are not obligated to keep anyone in your life who burns you in the name of family. It is not disloyal to protect yourself. It is not unkind to say enough. And it is not wrong to take matters into your own hands when the world refuses to see your pain. If you're still watching, thank you. You are proof that stories like this matter, that the quiet ones can still rise. The healing is messy, but beautiful. This journey isn't just mine, it's yours too. And in the final part, I'll show you exactly how I made sure this chapter could never be reopened. Not by her, not by the whispers, not even by my own self-doubt. What I did wasn't revenge. It was redemption. Please, stay till the end, because sometimes the final act of freedom isn't loud. It's permanent. The morning I signed the papers, it was oddly quiet. No birds chirping, no lawnmowers in the distance. Just silence, the kind of silence that feels like a held breath after a storm. I sat at the kitchen table, my daughter across from me watching me with curious eyes. She didn't know the full weight of what I was doing that day, not yet. But I knew I was finalizing something that would change everything. It wasn't a restraining order. It wasn't a lawsuit. It was something far more permanent. It was a formal legal disassociation, a protective agreement I'd worked on with my lawyer, drafted carefully, step by step. It included documentation of harassment, property trespassing, emotional distress, and clear statements from both my children supporting my action. What it did was simple but profound. It legally barred my ex-mother-in-law from contacting me, showing up at my property, attending family events hosted by me or my children, or even being within 200 feet of any private gathering we invited her to be excluded from. It was civil, quiet, binding, and final. I didn't want to hurt her. I wanted to be done with being hurt by her, but that's not where this part of the story begins. Let me take you back to the week before the paperwork. My son called. "Mom," said gently. "She sent me a letter." "I didn't respond," he continued. "It said that you're poisoning us, that you've brainwashed me." I waited, then he said, "I burned it." My heart cracked, not from pain, but from relief. "You didn't have to do that," whispered. "I wanted to," he replied. "Because I'm done pretending she hasn't been doing this my whole life?" He paused. I was just too scared to admit it before. And in that moment, I saw it. The cycle had snapped. The thread she used to pull us apart, guilt, shame. Silence was frayed and dead. Not because we fought fire with fire, but because we finally stopped lighting the match. The legal process took longer than I expected. So I spent those days reflecting on everything she'd done, not to fuel rage, but to face it, name it, Dad, and finally set it down. Like the first Thanksgiving, she criticized my cooking and later claimed I was too sensitive. She bought my daughter a real mother figure doll for Christmas and said it with a wink. Like the day of my divorce, she said, "I always knew you weren't strong enough to hold a man." And somehow, I forgave her. Not because she deserved it, but because I did. Forgiveness doesn't mean she's welcome back. It means I stopped letting her live in my head rent-free, poisoning the air I breathe. It means I buried the pain, not in denial, but in truth, because the truth is, people like her don't change unless they want to. And sometimes, they don't want to, but I did. I wanted peace, and peace is expensive. It costs boundaries, silence, standing alone for a while. It costs being misunderstood, gossiped about, accused of being dramatic. It costs your comfort, but it buys your life back. And so, on the day I signed that agreement, I did it with no anger left, just stillness. My daughter asked, "Does this mean she's never coming back?" I looked at her. "Not unless we let her. And we won't." She nodded. "Good." Later that night, I lit a candle. Not for her, for me. A small ritual, quiet one. To close a long, painful chapter. But even in closure, life surprises you. A few days later, I got a card in the mail. No return address. I opened it. Inside, a single sentence. "You'll regret isolating me. Family always turns eventually." Down a number. Name, no signature. But I knew. I didn't react. I didn't cry. I took a photo, forwarded it to my lawyer, then burned the original in my fireplace. Because here's what I finally understood. You don't need to win over toxic people. You need to win yourself back from them. And I had. Weeks passed. My son and Emma came over often. My daughter got her first college acceptance letter. We baked the same cake that had once been shattered and laughed when the frosting slid sideways. We laughed because we had healed enough to find joy again, but I know not everyone has that yet. Maybe you're still in the storm. Maybe your Marcia still shows up uninvited, still whispers poison, still throws matches at everything you build. Please hear me. You are not weak for wanting peace. You are not bad for setting boundaries. You're not cruel for choosing joy. Over tradition, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop responding to people who feed on your reaction. I know what it feels like to be exhausted by your own love. To love someone who keeps twisting it into a weapon. To smile through holidays while your heart screams inside. But that doesn't have to be your forever. You can end the cycle. You can take matters into your own hands, not with revenge, but with grace, with clarity, with strength built from years of holding back. Let them call you heartless. Let them call you bitter. Let them call you selfish. Because when the storm clears and the silence settles, you'll hear your own voice again, and that is worth everything. My story isn't perfect. I still flinch when the phone rings, and it's an unknown number. I still get nervous at big family events, worried someone will ask where Grandma is. But then I look around at my children, my peace, my life, and I know I made the right choice. And you can too. If this story meant something to you, I hope you'll share it. It's not for clicks, not for drama, but because someone, somewhere, is quietly breaking under the weight of family pain, afraid to speak, afraid to act, afraid to lose love. Let this be your sign that it's okay to choose yourself. Let this be the permission you were waiting for. You don't owe your life to someone just because they share your blood or once did. You owe your life to you. Thank you for staying until the end. This reminded you of your own story? I see you. I believe you. I honor you. Now go build your life. No permission required.